Good morning, everybody. You can hear me there, okay? You can, yeah, lovely. So you're very welcome to our GMIT Innovation Hub Galway Christmas event. We're delighted to have you all. As you can imagine, we had planned this as an in-person event a few months ago when we thought COVID was reducing and we might come back to some level of normality. But unfortunately, we can't do that now. So we're actually online, and we have a few people here in the events area, and we've a lot of people that were in this morning, got our little food goodie bag, and are actually listening and looking at the recording, if you like, online in their own units, which is absolutely great. So this is the end of our first year for us in the GMIT Innovation Hub with the new extension, and we're delighted to say that the progress has been really exciting. We have 7 new medical device clients have joined us over the last 12 months. We have 129 staff across all the clients in the extended incubator, which is a very significant amount. And indeed, over 40 new hires have joined the iHub in the last few months alone. That's brand new jobs, mainly for the medical device companies in the extended incubator. And also, another key metric for startups is funding. So we have raised, the clients in the building today have raised over 18 million in investment funding in this year alone. And you'll hear some of the updates today on some of the details of that. So without further ado, Michelle, you can bring us on to the agenda. So we have 4 speakers today. We have 3 client companies, and we have 1 international CRO that's going to say a few words, and we will do an additional update with them in a larger workshop in 2022. So I'm delighted to say that Liam Farrisey will say a few words on CrannMed. CrannMed have been with us a number of years in the Innovation Centre. They have expanded several times. They have 2 large incubation units here, R&D based, and significantly they have worked with the Med Centre and the Medical Imaging Suite on several occasions. So we'll hear from Liam in a few minutes, and I have a couple of slides just to briefly run through before we hear the speakers. Liz will talk about Tympany Medical, and Liz joined Tympany Medical during 2021. They have 2 incubation units as well, with a recent R&D unit along with the HQ unit, and we're delighted to welcome Liz and Rory to the Innovation Hub. And Tomas is here with Rockfield Medical for quite a few years with significant R&D, and I'll say a little bit more on that before we introduce them. So Isabella then will say a few words in relation to critical clinical research areas that I think will be of significant added value for our iHub clients. So I have a few slides I just want to run through very briefly. You can go the first one there, Michelle. So just to mention a few successes at the start of our presentation, and really this is around funding. So DTIF funding has been very strategic, and you can see here with CrannMed have won 2.5 million on DTF on the 3rd call, and indeed also 3.5 million from the European Innovation Council for the Horizon Europe programme. And that funding is very, very important for medical device companies. And indeed, that DTIF that CrannMed have won this year is one of 4 DTIF Call 3s that have been successful in this year alone for clients in the iHub for a total of about 11 million euro. CrannMed are focused on the commercialization of catheter-based medical devices, and particularly looking at knee osteoarthritis. And I don't need to say too much because Liam is going to talk later on this. Next slide, Michelle. So another funding success only recently was Tympany Medical. They secured 3.5 million in funding led by a VC round with Enterprise Ireland, WDC, and a number of key strategic medtech angel investors. And we congratulate Liz and Rory on raising that critical funding. Tympany Medical are developing a next generation innovative camera platform to integrate into a suite of E&D surgical endoscopes. And indeed, Liz will say a few words on Tympany Medical in a few minutes. Next slide, Michelle. So the third company, just to talk about very briefly, is actually a New Frontiers client. So they have come from the GMIT New Frontiers program last year. So Yvonne Comer has a company called Rugby Smarts, and it's to do with technology to provide automated real-time video analytics using artificial intelligence, machine learning, and computer vision. This is a very, very interesting area with critically the integration of, the rugby side with Yvonne and the technology side with William. And it's great to see them starting out on the New Frontiers. They have also been named one of the most investable companies from a dedicated sport accelerator only in the last few weeks. So next slide there, Michelle. So now we'll start our presentations, and without further ado, I'll hand over to Liam Farrisey, and we'll have the CrannMed update.
Okay, thanks, George. Can you hear me? You can?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just was looking at a photograph of myself there in the introduction slides. That's about 15 years old, so there's a more honest photograph coming up here quickly. Can you bring up the slides there, Michelle, please? Yeah. So as I said, I'll try and give some background to CrannMed and then just talk about where we are and some of our future plans as well. So the company was founded in 2018, and then as George said, we moved into GMIT iHubs in 2019, and I think we've been in 4 or 5 different rooms. So we've had great flexibility in kind of expanding and taking a little bit more space as we needed it over the years. But the first kind of 9 to 12 months, I suppose, of our time in GMIT was really spent just trying to figure out what our niche was going to be and what product we were going to develop for what market. So, in some ways, I think it was very like probably being a part of the BioInnovate program or something similar. And, maybe there's no way to get around that work that just has to happen in terms of market identification. But we spent a lot of time, assessing different markets and organizing funding and building relationships. But we built one in particular relationship with a doctor called Dr. Ari Isaacson, who had started to do a lot of experimental work on embolization for neo-osteoarthritis. And working with him, we figured out the need for resorbable embolic to make these new treatments kind of a practical reality. So as I said, it was really kind of the middle of 19 before we were able to define ourselves as a resorbable embolic company for neo-osteoarthritis. So if you move on to the next slides, Michelle, I can say a bit about the market and a bit about how our technology works. So the market that we're aiming for is neo-osteoarthritis, and it ticks all the boxes in terms of market size and patient population. It's pretty huge. There's over 300 million symptomatic people with neo-osteoarthritis, and then there's 30 million within the EU and the US, that are actively being treated at any one time. But for us, the thing that really kind of jumps out is the amount of unsuccessful patients treated. So for anybody that starts treatment, 60% of them will ultimately fail of all available options, and they'll end up with knee replacements to take out the knee and put in an artificial knee. And it's not a simple failure. So this typically happens over a 13-year period where they just try treatment after treatment, of increased strength and intensity. Can you go back? Yeah, thanks. But ultimately fail. And I think if you dig into that a little bit, the most common treatments for osteoarthritis at the moment are hyaluronic acid, and that's about a 3 billion treatment market. But it's actually contraindicated by an awful lot of physician societies as something that just simply doesn't work for the knee. So it works a little bit for the first 6 months, but then ultimately wears off. And there's some studies that suggest it actually accelerates the breakdown of the knee. And then the next, I suppose, most common treatment is opioid, and as we know, that just manages the pain. But again, it doesn't work long term, and so many physicians and physician societies would contraindicate that for treatment of long term pain. So, it is very surprising and I suppose disappointing that a treatment that affects so many people has got so many treatment options that ultimately don't work, and people end up with surgery after long years of pain. So if you move on, Michelle, I say a little bit about what we're trying to do. So our product then consists of resorbable particles and a flow-directed microcatheter. And so these particles are tiny. They're 200 micron organic particles, and they have controlled degradation, so they break down over a fixed period of time. And then we deliver them into the tiny vessels of the swollen knee using the microcatheter. And then once they're deployed in these little vessels, so once if you have knee osteoarthritis, you have a whole proliferation of tiny little blood vessels supplying the knee. And once our particles are deployed into these vessels, they shut down the blood flow to the swollen region. And it's a similar effect really to using an ice pack on a frozen ankle. If you put ice pack on a swollen ankle, if you put an ice pack on a swollen ankle, it kind of restricts the flow and it reduces the swelling. So in our case, we completely stop the flow for a period of 5 days, and so we have a permanent effect on the swelling. And these little vessels, they also, I suppose, they're also intertwined with lots of little nerves, and because we shut down the flow to the vessels, we also kill those nerves, and so we have an impact on the pain as well as on the swelling. And so, our treatment is, I think, the only one that works directly on the mechanism of osteoarthritis. So, hopefully that gives us good cause for encouragement that we're doing something that's going to be differentiated from sort of pain reduction therapies that are very common at the moment. Okay, Michelle. So over the course of 2021, I think we made good progress. So our product is performing as intended, which is always good news. And in our case, that means it's degrading consistently over a fixed period of time. It's robust enough to be delivered through the catheter. It's isobuoyant so that it stays it continues to float in contrast, which it's delivered in the blood, so it can make its way to its target. I guess once it's in the body, it can do a complete and consistent occlusion to stop the blood flow. So we've done a lot of testing both on animals in the bench over the last few months, and we feel now that the product is performing as it should be. We also managed to get breakthrough device designation from the FDA, and we followed that up with 2 key sub-meetings. So we feel we have pretty good visibility on the path to regulatory approval. And then, as George said, we were lucky enough to get some DTIF funding and some EIC funding. And I think, as George mentioned it, but a lot of thanks to some of our colleagues in the iHub there who gave us lots of hints and tips as to how to fill out these applications and how to work some of the systems that needed to be done. So in particular to Thomas and Simon and Stephen and Tony, who were very helpful in sharing information. But clearly, getting the funding is a huge help to us, and I think gives us the runway certainly to get our product approved. Next there, Michelle. And so for 2022, we have a number of targets. The first is design freeze. We follow that up with design verification, and then look to do FDA submission in Q3 of 2022. So, within reason, I think an awful lot of these are within our own control, which is always a good thing. So we have a very clear focus for 22. We probably stand back a little bit from CE mark just because the amount of clinical data that's needed, that'll come in time, but it's not a focus for 22. And then the other thing we need to put a lot of effort into is around reimbursement. So we have a relatively new and differentiated procedure, and so making sure we do the right trials and go the right way about getting reimbursement will be critical for our long-term success. Next one, Michelle. And so if we take a little bit of a look at life beyond regulatory approval, which we're hoping we'll get to for 23. There's a couple of things that we're working on. So our aim is ultimately to become independently profitable, and not to be depending on a big company to come in and acquire us or distribute the product. And so, to achieve that, we're taking a couple of steps. So, one of the more immediate ones is to set up our own manufacturing facility so that we'll be self-sufficient from a manufacturing point of view. So we're actually moving out of iHubs hopefully before Christmas and moving into a new facility where we'll set up a small clean room. So I think that makes sense for us because our manufacturing is kind of technologically complex, but it's not labor intensive and it's not space intensive. So it makes sense that we would do it ourselves. And then the second thing we're doing is to kind of create a portfolio of products. So again, we think if we have a range of embolization products that will allow us to meet the needs of physicians doing vascular embolization, we think it'll make us more effective in going to market in US and in targeting the office-based labs or even some of the EU distributors. So they're kind of two extra focuses for us, I suppose, over the next 12 to 18 months. So that's the CrannMed update. So thanks for listening, and George, thanks for organising.
That's great. Thanks, Liam, for the update and the details on the EmboSure device. It's really interesting to see the massive size of the market and 60% of them that need knee surgery. So, and also the point about the FDA getting the breakthrough, which is really interesting. One other thing to mention, I think, was the teamwork within the iHubs, where Liam thanked specifically a number of people in relation to the funding. And I think that's really important because the full team here of Turlock and Michelle and Christine and myself work really hard at building that team and making sure that everyone knows everyone else. And hence, that's where we get the buzz from. And it's great to end on the vision for 2023. So Liam will be moving out at Christmas time, just very soon, and we'd be sad to see them moving out. But that's what an incubator is about. We take in companies at a very early stage. We work with them very, very closely. We understand their needs very well. We plug in the R&D wherever we can. We help them with funding, and then they need to move on. But when they move on, that gives another one or two companies a chance to come in. So we're delighted and well done, Liam and CrannMed. So next speaker is Liz in Tympany Medical, and I said a few words on that earlier on, so we're delighted to welcome Liz to say a few words on Tympany.
Thanks, George. Good morning, everyone, and thanks to the iHub for inviting me to speak on behalf of Tympany Medical. I'd first like to admit that I have an 18-month-old in the background, so my apologies if there's any significant interruptions, but I suppose that's in the spirit of the ongoing pandemic, and I'm sure all of us have kind of had our own blips to deal with as we've gone through the last year or so. More than that, actually, isn't it, really, at this stage, 2 years. So I'm just going to share my screen briefly. So Tympany Medical are on a mission to deliver panoramic endoscopy to the ENT space. This is in the form of designing and developing world-class endoscopes with unparalleled visualization and end-user experience. What we are doing is growing a dynamic and creative multidisciplinary team across multiple different disciplines, in particular optics, electronics, mechanical engineering, mechatronics, and biomedical engineering. We also are aiming to build a reliable and recognisable brand. So to date, so just to give everyone a bit of context of Tympany Medical, so myself and Rory are co-founders of the company. We started out in BioInnovate across the city in NUIG. We followed the BioInnovate process, which is really about identifying unmet clinical needs, and we were tasked with looking at the ENT space. So we made observations both here in Galway and as well as that in the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, and we saw over 100 ENT procedures over the course of 5 weeks and identified that really there was an unmet need in ear surgery in particular. So for those of you not familiar, conductive hearing loss is a type of hearing loss that can be improved with surgical intervention. So patients will have perforated eardrums or chronic ear infections or benign process called a cholesteatoma, which can invade into the tympanic membrane and cause reduction in hearing. And these patients require surgical intervention. So the current surgical intervention that's available is actually a microscope. And most surgeons train up in using a microscope. Now, this gives them a good two-handed operating technique, but really the limitation of this is that it gives a very narrow field of view, so only a straight shot and direct visualization. And what we had seen over the course of time is that there's a number of surgeons trying to innovate in this space using an endoscope, but really what the endoscope does is forces them to drop a hand and learn a single-handed technique, and it's akin to learning to tie your shoelaces with one hand, and I'm not sure any of us are too good at that. So really we looked a bit further throughout 2017 and 2018. We worked closely with clinicians to look at the need in detail. Specifically, we spoke to surgeons in the Netherlands, in Spain, in France, Australia. So we really did a very broad sweep of the clinical end users to validate our need. And since 2018, we've worked closely with Leiden University Medical Centre with Professor Johan Freins, who is a preeminent ear surgeon, on the development of AutoView, which is our first endoscope for ear surgery, which allows surgeons to perform minimally invasive ear surgery using a two-handed technique. So subsequently then we saw another set of unmet clinical needs really in the endoscopy space, and this is related to the design of the endoscopes themselves. So what we identified was that current endoscope technology doesn't allow surgeons to see around corners due to the fixed angle of view of the endoscopes, and as well as that there's a challenge in cleaning endoscopes. So what happens is surgeons will be operating, there will be debris on the lens, they'll have to take it out, and often you can take out an endoscope in ear surgery. We've seen endoscopes taken out over 30 times in the space of a couple of hours of surgery. So that led us to kind of develop our platform technology. And over the course of 2020, we finalised the design of our first device, which we'll be submitting to the FDA in 2022. And additionally, we de-risked our platform technology. And in 2021, as George said, we were successful in raising 3.5 million from a number of key investors, which really allows us to stay in the iHub in the first set, keep the lights on and pay our rent, but also to build out our team and expand on the capabilities that we have. So at the moment we have a very diverse team with backgrounds in, as I said, electronics, optics, biomedical engineering, project management and operations, and quality. So my background is in clinical medicine and Rory's in medical device design. So we really are trying to bring together as many disciplines as possible into the innovation and the delivery of our innovative medical devices. So from a team perspective, I think this is a great opportunity for you guys to know who's on our team when you pass them in the corridor, and put some faces to, or names to the faces that you may see around the place. And I think it's unfortunate that we're not able to do this in a face-to-face manner, but I'm really looking forward to 2022 and hopefully having more in-person events where we can all start to get to know each other a little bit better. Finally, just to give a little snapshot of the endoscope device that we're building. So as you can see here, the speculum-shaped device is AutoView, and the rotating camera is our platform device, which we have DTIF to support our development of this device. So that is Tympany Medical, and I've kept it kind of short because Marnie hasn't actually appeared, so I'm thankful for that. But if anyone wants to chat to me or drop me a line or discuss anything further, happy to chat, and always happy to have a cup of tea in the tea room as well if anyone wants to talk. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Liz, from Tympany Medical for the update. It's interesting to see the journey there, starting off with BioInnovate, and then to see, that the product AutoView and indeed the international linkages. So the best of luck with the FDA submissions in 2021. And you're right, it is very important to keep the lights on in the iHub. So part of the funding goes to that, which is great. So our next speaker, if you go to the slide, Michelle, it's actually Rockfield Medical. So Tomas and the team have been in Rockfield Medical, have been here with us for quite a few years. They have expanded several times. In fact, they have 4 incubation units now with 2 R&D and 2 HQ units. So it's very, very interesting with international support for manufacturing. So Tomas is a previous successful funding as well with a DTIF previously, and indeed with FTI funding, where the Met Centre was the research partner there. And that's very, very significant. It gives a good example of how when you come to the iHubs, we can make those linkages with the research partners and indeed help them to leverage some funding. So I'm looking forward to hear what Tomas has to say from Rockfield Medical, and we'll hand over to you now.
Thanks very much, George. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah, perfect.
I'll take that as yeah. So I don't know, Michelle, have you got the slides, or can I share them?
You can share them if you wish.
Yeah, okay, perfect. So again, I'd like to thank George first off for the opportunity to present today. And as he said, we're kind of one of the long stay companies at this stage. I first came to the iHub as part of the New Frontiers program and started working with Tony and his team and George, you know, more years than I care to remember at this stage. But it started off with just myself, and over that time, we've worked very closely with both the iHub and the college to innovation vouchers right up to the grants we currently have. And over that time, we've built out a very strong team in Rockfield. So like the rest of us, it's a pity we can't do this in person, but just to kind of give yourself a bit of familiarity with some of the Rockfield team, we've got great diversity, great experience. Some of them work remotely all the time. Sometimes they're in part-time, and we've got a couple of people working for us in both Poland and the US as well. So we've got a fairly diverse team. There's 13 of us at this point, and we'll be expanding with about 4 to 5 more hires in 2022. So if you see these guys going around the building, you'll know which team they're part of once we all get back to some sort of normality. So what we're doing in Rockfield is we're in the intra-feeding space, and that's for patients who need to be tube fed. So currently the systems that are available are designed very much for static use, whereby a patient needs to get a bag of formula, feed it through electronic pump and directly into the patient. It's very much designed for bedside use, and it's not very mobile. So we've developed what you see here in the middle, what we call the Mobility Plus. It's a totally mechanical pump. It works like a big balloon inside, so that can actually deliver the liquid formula to the patient at a set rate over a period of time. And what it does, it makes a much more mobile and lightweight system. It's also quiet because it's got no electronic moving parts. It's a 4-in-1 product, so it includes the pump, the given sets, the feeds, etc. And really, it's about improving compliance and quality of life for the patient themselves. So we're really trying to disrupt the space. So if you have a look at kind of what's available currently, there's been very little innovation over the last 30 years. It started off with patients feeding themselves, simply pouring the formula into a syringe directly into a stomach in the stomach. Then they started using gravity bags so that they could regulate the flow a little bit better. And then they started using peristaltic pumps. And that's very much plateaued over the last kind of 30 years. Pumps haven't really changed, functions remain the same. So we're going to try and disrupt the space and come out with a kind of wearable device, which is light, quiet, and mobile. And again, as I said, it's very much around quality of life for the patient. So that's our first product. As part of our product pipeline, we're then going to use this as a platform to develop a range of products, including building a sensor into the device, which will allow us to capture some data, such as when the patient feeds, built-in alarms, etc. And this can all be shared then with the clinician or the carers. And this is where we've received some of the DTIF funding, which I'll go into a little bit later. So really what we're focusing on is the users in the middle ground. So we're not really looking to develop Mobility Plus for neonates or people in intensive care. So we're very much focusing it on mobile users, be it mobile pediatric users, adults, or even people with limited mobility in around the home or in a wheelchair. Whereas the system gives them a much greater flexibility around just doing their day-to-day activities, being able to go to school, work, college, etc. So they're really our target users. So as I said, we've been very successful with a number of grants to help us fund this. So the current grants secured, we've been working with GMIT on a number of these. So we've received the EIC Horizon 2020 fund back in May 2020. So this is just solely with Rockfield, and that's to develop the pump as is, current process that we're going through FDA with. The DTIF, then we've partnered with the Met Gateway, so Sharon and her team. We've done a lot of work with them over the years, started off with an innovation voucher when I was on New Frontiers, and we've kind of kept that relationship going. Very good team to work with. It's great to have them on our doorstep. They're actually in our building now with the new fluoroscope. So we've got a Irish government DTIF fund there to develop the next generation product that will have a sensor built into it. And we've also received Horizon 2020 Fast Track to Innovation, which is about speeding up the manufacturing and the scalability of the Mobility Plus. And Met are also a partner on this with us, as it helped strengthen our application at the time. And they're feeding into some of the work packages, as well as they're actually the coordinator for the project. So they manage the finance side through the college. So as I said, kind of the next step for us really is to look at the wearable technology and how we can build a sensor into the device to allow us to capture data for both the user and for the carers and clinicians. So this is ongoing work we're doing with the DTIF, and we hope to have that finalized inside the next 18 months as scaled up so that we can manufacture with our other partners, SturdyPack, and go for FDA and CE mark approval in 2023 and 2024. So the main features we'd be looking for that would be around, the data capture, having an alarm function, live data and analytics, information and function, the types of feeds, durations, calories, etc., taken by each of the patients. So we've had a great relationship with the Mayo Clinic, where we've done a 45-person study over the last kind of 6 to 9 months. We've worked very closely with them, and this all feeds into our FDA 510K submission, which we submitted in May. So we're hoping to continue this relationship with drafting papers, white papers. We're presenting some abstracts at major conferences with the team in Mayo, and we'll also be working closely with them on the development of the next generation product, which also includes the data capture. So just to kind of give you an update to where we are from a regulatory point of view, because I suppose quite a lot of people here are in the medtech space. We held a number of pre-subs with the FDA in 2019, 2020. They approved a predicate device for us, and we submitted a 510K application in May 2021. So we're hoping to have FDA 510K approval for the first product, which is the Mobility Plus, in Q1 22. So this is a picture of us here as some of the team who actually attended the pre-sub meetings in Washington. We found that very valuable to be able to get face-to-face in front of the FDA. So just to give you kind of a bigger picture in terms of the space of enteral feeding, there's over 500,000 people in the US who require an enteral feed every single day. Roughly the same number in Europe. That's obviously between all the different countries. And then we probably have the same number again for the rest of the world when you take markets like Asia, Japan, Australia, etc., South America. So the market is massive, and our device is 24-hour single patient use. So it's really a high volume product. So we need to be able to manufacture this in high volumes in different regions. And that's what the FTI grant is allowing us to do. So really our milestones in the next year are build out the team and sales team in the US, obviously get FDA approval for our first product. We're raising Series A funding in Q2 2022, and we've actually just in the process of closing an actual investment deal today, in fact, with the European Investment Bank. So it's been a hectic 24 hours trying to get everything across the line, but I'm glad to say that we are just about to close out a deal today. So that's great from a funding point of view, and it's one that George can add to his list of the millions raised by clients in 2021. So that's great for us, and it's good for the team, to get it done by the end of the year. So we're also going to be looking at US market launch in 2022, and then moving on to CE mark. And we've had some very good interest from the Japanese market. So we're working closely with Enterprise Ireland and a couple of distributors in Japan. So potentially we'll be looking to also get a regulatory approval in Japan, probably in 2023 or post 2023. So that's a very quick summary. I'd just like to thank again George and the team. They've been super to us over the years, and as I said, we've kind of grown from the smallest office in the iHub now to only having 3 offices, George, not 4. But if you're going to give us an extra one, we'll take it. So look, I just wish everybody the best over Christmas, and hopefully 2022 we'll all be able to be back in the building and do this face to face in the future. So thanks very much, George, and to the rest of your team also.
Great, thanks, Tomas, for that update, and I'm particularly delighted, the path and the journey there from the New Frontiers programme. As Tomas said, he was one of the earlier New Frontiers participants, and then to move along and see how it has grown, it's really a joy, and it's very significant, and also to see the linkages with the Met Centre and GMIT research expertise. I mean, there's massive innovation there in tube feeding, and the thing about it is, I remember during the New Frontiers when we were doing some of the market research, I mean, there are other products out there that are, giving solutions for this problem, if you like. But what has been completed here massively by Rockfield Medical is innovation, and innovation around new products, new services, new features for what they're delivering, which is great. So thanks very much, Tomas. So
thanks, George.
Our final speaker today is with me here in the event centre, and I'm delighted to welcome Isabella from the US. So Isabella is from a company called Proxima CRO, and they're an international clinical research organisation that we're collaborating with here in the iHub. And today we're just going to get a short verbal update from Isabella about their products and services and what they do, and direct you to their website. And then in the new year, in 2022, we intend to do a deeper workshop, if you like, with Proxima CRO, and maybe even be able to do it in person, depending on how we get on with COVID. So I'll welcome Isabella.
Hello, everyone. Okay, the mic is high, but so I'll stand on my tippy toes. All right, so hi, as we mentioned, I'm the Director of Regulatory Affairs at Proxima Clinical Research, so we're a new member of the GMIT Hub. At Proxima, I do all things regulatory quality, and I help a little bit with clinical. So Proxima, as George mentioned, is a clinical research organization, but we also provide regulatory and quality services. So we have 3 areas that we primarily work in: regulatory, quality, and clinical. We can provide full service for all 3 of those areas. So what that typically looks like for regulatory is we meet companies at a really early stage, work with them on their regulatory strategies, find out their pathways for various markets, either US, EU, Health Canada, etc. And then we can work with them on the final regulatory submissions as well, and also FDA interactions in between. We work in all of those different regions, but primarily the most we work in is the US region. After we talk about the regulatory, we'll talk about a little bit about clinical. So with clinical, we take the company from really early stage startup. So clinical protocol, data monitoring plan, data management plan, all of those services, designing the CRF, designing the EDC, and then we can go to full site startup, running the trial from start to finish, so doing all the clinical monitoring in between, and then study closeout, which would contain writing the report that hopefully will support the regulatory submission. And then finally, there's the quality services where we can work with companies to design their SOPs, make sure that they work for the companies. We can fully manage the quality management system, serve as a contract QA manager for companies, and provide any audit support for either ISO 13485 or for FDA inspections. So that kind of covers the broad range of our services. Right now, our primary location is in Houston, but we're all over the United States, and we're making our move into Europe by collaborating with GMIT, starting here in Ireland, since you guys have such a great med tech hub here in the EU. So that's about it.
Great, thanks, Isabella. And there's a few reasons why we want to work and indeed to collaborate with Proxima CRO. We want to be able to bring the expertise, if you like, from the US and the deep knowledge of the market. And the three areas, as Isabella said, the regulatory, quality, and clinical, they have a huge amount of experience in each of those. So if any of the clients that are here today wanted to talk to Isabella, then she's in the hub just for a short period of time. And also, if there's any specific areas that you would like to get an input on, because we do intend to do a larger event, in Q1 next year, just send me an email and give us an idea of what you'd like an update, or what area you might like Proxima CRO to talk about. And certainly we'll feed that back to Kevin and Isabella and the team there. So we're delighted to have Isabella here, and thanks for saying the few words. So that's the end of our event this morning. I'm delighted that we could put it on, if you like, online. It's a pity that we had a plan indeed to have a lot of people here and to do an in-person event. So we had to go to our contingency plan and bring in some food bags and give people some goodies at 10:15 that they could go to their terminals and have something to eat while they're looking at the update. So there's a few people I want to thank. First of all, the team in the iHub Galway, Turlock and Christine and Michelle. They have done massive work over the year. I mean, you can see here people passing by. We have a brand new extension. It is full now. We have 100% occupancy. The amount of work that was involved for the team to achieve that and to work with it and not to drop the ball anywhere was hugely significant. So I want to say thanks to them. Also our team in Mayo, and I know some of them are looking in today, to Maria and Barbara. So I want to say thanks and well done to keeping the Mayo iHub open and the progress there. And indeed, critically, our two program managers, Tony on New Frontiers and Sandra on the Empower program. New Frontiers was mentioned a few times today, and that's very, very important. And we want to continue that integration and get more companies from New Frontiers that would, take occupancy and move on and progress and grow in the iHubs. So I just want to finish off by wishing every one of you, our clients in particular, a safe and a happy Christmas, a peaceful 2022, and we'll have to see what that brings. So enjoy the break. It's much needed by everybody, and most importantly from us here at GMIT iHub, stay safe. Thank you.